A Christmas Carol, the second of the three spirits. Scrooge awakens just before 1 o'clock in the morning. He is determined to be awake before the next spirit arrives. He does not want to be caught off guard again, like he was by the first spirit. However, the second spirit is late. This causes Scrooge to be exceedingly nervous as he lies in bed, expecting almost anything to happen. As he waits, he realizes he is no longer in control of his life or his destiny. He can't even control time anymore. Being in control is Scrooge's badge of honor. Losing control is what Scrooge fears the most. As he waits for the second spirit, he is terrified, to say the least. I believe the second spirit arriving late is a silent message to Scrooge. I think it is a way of telling Scrooge that the spirit will control time, not Scrooge. The spirit will control him instead of Scrooge controlling the spirit. He is helpless regarding his circumstances. Much like when we realize God is in control of the world around us and we are not. No matter how hard we try, we cannot completely control our surroundings or the people in our lives. I believe Scrooge is learning the same lesson. Scrooge suddenly sees a blaze of ruddy light in the next room. Dickens writes Scrooge's reaction as more alarming than a dozen ghosts, as he was powerless to make out what it meant. I believe Dickens uses the word powerless here as significance. Remember, Scrooge is a man of power and prominence. He cannot tolerate being a subordinate and doesn't want to answer to anyone, not even a higher power. Power is Scrooge's strength, and he is unwilling to let it go. I also believe Scrooge is once again afraid of the light. He continues to resist it. He doesn't understand the light or the meaning behind it. In this chapter, I believe the light represents the message the Spirit brings, and Scrooge is foreboding against it. Therefore, Scrooge doesn't fear the ghost. He fears the message the ghost has to offer. He is stubborn and still unable to confront his wrongdoings. Knowing he must endure the presence of the ghost, Scrooge gets up, shuffles grudgingly into his slippers, and walks to the door. He opens it and witnesses quite a spectacle. It is a jolly giant, a huge man with the ability to maneuver himself with ease. He is surrounded by a smorgasbord of delicious food. Why food? History notes that food was a common form of trade instead of money. I believe the food represents a form of trade or barter. It is an offering the Spirit brings in exchange for Scrooge to witness his present life. If you recall, each spirit has an offering for Scrooge. Marley's ghost offered Scrooge the burden of chains that he forged in life, link by link. The chains are synonymous with the life Scrooge had made for himself as well. The next spirit offered light, which represented exposure to Scrooge's past. Now, the present ghost is offering food as a barter. Why barter when Scrooge has no choice but to witness his present? Because the spirit is kind, jolly, helpful, and giving. It is a way of saying, I will give you this food in exchange for you witnessing your present life. The spirit calls out to Scrooge, Come in and know me better, man. Scrooge is reluctant and timid. He lowers his head, not knowing what to expect. The ghost explains, I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me. Scrooge has no option but to look. Seeing this spirit causes Scrooge to relinquish his resistance because he is a giant. He is much larger and stronger than the former two ghosts. This must mean he has a giant message to deliver, and Scrooge is reluctant to hear it. However, the spirit is a jolly fellow with clear and kind eyes. Scrooge, not wanting to look into the eyes of the spirit, submissively says, Conduct me where you will. I went forth last night on compulsion, and I learnt a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it." The ghost takes Scrooge on a journey through the streets of London on Christmas morning. The weather is harsh, but the people are full of joy. It is Christmas Day and a time for celebrating. People are shoveling sidewalks with good cheer. Children are sliding along the streets covered in ice and snow. Women are running to the grocery store for last-minute food items. It is quite a sight to see. After watching for some time, Scrooge notices one obvious detail about this scene. None of the people are wealthy. None of them have status. None of them are business associates from his coveted London Exchange. They are poor people, yet they are all happy. They have meager belongings, yet are thankful for what they have. Scrooge is witnessing people and experiencing events that he has never seen before. He never stopped to take time and look upon his fellow man. The Spirit's revelation was all new to him. He didn't know what to think. Scrooge never understood the joy of Christmas, and even now was unsure of its delight. He was always engrossed with himself. Christmas was all, bah, humbug. He thought it was a frivolous time of the year for employees to take the day off for such a ridiculous holiday. Dickens wrote that Scrooge defiantly told his clerk, Bob Cratchit, "A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December." Soon, the Spirit moved Scrooge to the home of Bob Cratchit. He was very surprised to see that they lived in a very tiny house. He had no idea that his clerk and his family lived so poorly. Yet they all seemed very happy. Happy to be together, happy to share the holiday, and ecstatic to share Christmas dinner. When the family was all together, Mrs. Cratchit asked Bob how Tiny Tim behaved in church. He explained that he was as good as ever, and somehow he gets thoughtful, sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things you ever heard. Bob tells his wife that coming home, Tiny Tim hoped that people saw him in church as a cripple. Bob couldn't understand why he said this, but Tiny Tim explained, it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. When Scrooge sees this, he is ashamed of himself. He is reminded of old Fezziwig and how he made Scrooge's life and those around him feel wonderful. Mr. Fezziwig created a pleasant working environment for his employees and treated Scrooge like a son. He used his power for good. In contrast, Scrooge uses his position of authority for the wrong reasons. He uses it against others who are weak. The Cratchits live in poverty, and Scrooge controls Bob's meager salary. In seeing Tiny Tim and the Cratchit family, Scrooge realizes he could easily release their struggle with poverty and make their burdens lighter. Next, Scrooge witnesses the family all in a bustle over Christmas dinner. There is a full menu of Mrs. Cratchit's best dishes on the table. The goose is so large it hardly fits in the oven. The pudding is so sweet it is singing on the fire. Everyone is laughing, joking, and full of joy. After dinner, the Cratchits gather around the fire. Bob offers a toast to his family, saying, "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us." Tiny Tim chimes in, "God bless us, everyone." In watching this scene, Scrooge hangs his head in shame. He is beginning to realize he has been the foolish one. He entreats the Spirit if Tiny Tim will live. The Spirit replies that he sees a vacant seat among the family, a crutch in the corner, and no Tiny Tim. The Spirit urges Scrooge that if these events go unchanged, then the child will definitely die. "No, no," cries Scrooge. He pleads with the Spirit for the child to be spared. The Spirit responds, "What then? If he be like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population. Scrooge is overwhelmed with grief from hearing his own words repeated back to him. What a horrible thing to say! He cannot bear the thought of a child dying from an affliction that could be corrected with the proper medical care. Scrooge knows he can easily afford an excellent doctor to cure Tiny Tim. He also knows his entire life has been a complete waste of valuable time. Time he could have spent helping others like Tiny Tim. The Bible warns against wasting time. Valuable time God has given us. We are to use our time wisely so we will not look back with regret. We have no idea what tomorrow holds. Moments here on earth count in light of eternity.